This is Darren Pearson, also known as DARIUSTWIN, and I'm going to get into 13 questions that you had about light painting, and I'm going to answer them one after another using your questions. So let's get into it. Question number one by Rufus. How did you discover light painting or the process of it? So I first discovered light painting back in 2007, and it was because I picked up a coffee table book and it had this image of Picasso drawing a centaur. What was interesting to me was everybody knows the artist Picasso. He's awesome. He does these amazing paintings and drawings and all these cool things. But what I'd never seen before was him drawing with light. So it took a more technical mind to capture this process. And this was a photographer by the name of John Malay. And he's an Albanian photographer that worked for Life magazine. And he went to Picasso's studio and they shot a series of light drawings where Jean Millet gave Picasso this light drawing tool similar to what I have built called the Night Rider, but it's he had a wired flashlight at the time, and he started doing these light drawings on photographs, long exposures. So once I picked up this book and I saw this process and I saw that it was shot in black and white film back in 1949, it made me think about all the different possibilities with modern DSLR cameras. So I had a friend that was a photographer over at the time, and I asked him, how do you do this? What is this technique? How does the drawing just hang there in the air? And he explained it to me. And we did, a couple messing around shots. So that was my first experience light painting back in October of 2007. And I drew myself shaking hands with a gesture drawing of a light painting. And I've been hooked on it. I have been hooked on it ever since. So let's go to question number two. What kind of light do you use? So one of the lights that I really love working with the most is a drawing light that I've built specifically for light painting. And I call it Night Rider. And it's got a button on the top. It's got a rechargeable battery in it, and it has a very bright LED. So you basically draw things with it, and then I have color tips that I like to plug in the top of it. So let's say I want to use yellow. I'll plug in this yellow filter, and then I'll draw with the yellow. Oftentimes I'll put different colors in different pockets that I'm wearing. This is my cat Maybelline. Hello Maybelline. Yep, that's the camera. But anyways, that's the light that I love working with. And all right, come on, you're not answering questions. Get. So that's the light that I like drawing with the most, and the one that I use on a regular basis. Question number three. How do you know where to draw everything? Can you see it in real time on the camera? No, I can't see anything while I am doing it. So if I'm referencing something on my phone, usually it's a sketch that I've done before and I'm trying to make the image look like it. So sometimes I'll dim the screen and I'll look at something on my phone and I'll say, okay, I have to do it this way, these proportions. I'm trying to get the design to look right in the image, but I'm not, I don't have any progress report along the way. I'm not witnessing what I'm drawing as I'm creating it. And I feel like this kind of takes you out of this flow state that you need to be in when you are creating something good. So if it's something technical, like a skeleton or like a dinosaur or whatever, usually I'll just try again and again and again, and I'll study the exact design of whatever I'm doing to make sure that I have all the movements I need and the pieces of the puzzle working correctly, so that at the end, it's the flipped around version of what that is in the camera. sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, but it's really the ones that work out awesome that keep me coming back for more. So I may not go out and get a perfect drawing every single time, but oftentimes if I try enough, I will have one image that I love, and that's enough to keep me doing it again and again. Let's go to the next question. What was the first light art you did? So the first light art I did was, like I mentioned before, the photograph of Picasso was really interesting to me. And it was interesting because that was the first time I saw anything like it, and I had to figure it out for myself. So I asked a photographer friend how it was done, and he explained long exposure photography to me. And then we did a couple practice shots. So that was my first thing into it. I didn't even have a camera at that time. I ended up buying one in the coming weeks. I purchased like a used Canon Rebel XT for like $200, and then just started going out at night and trying to capture interesting things. And over time, I got better and better. My camera gear got better. I realized I had to build my own lights in order to get lights that worked for the specific purpose I was needing them for. So yeah, first light painting was done October of 2007, and I will show it to you now. Okay, another question. How can I learn to light paint? So this is a beautiful thing. It's anybody can learn. It's not a difficult thing to do. Almost everybody has a cell phone that's capable of downloading an app where a long exposure can be tried on. So the better the camera, the better the images, but I mean, a phone works perfectly fine for most people's first attempts. I'd recommend you can go to my website, DARIUSTWIN.com. I have an educational section that'll tell you all the different details and camera specifics in order to try it for yourself. So let's go to the next question. Do you edit the pictures in layers and then make a whole picture? So I think the question is, when I do multiple designs within the same image, do I layer them in Photoshop, or is it one long exposure? And the answer is, it is one long exposure. So I usually use bulb mode on the camera. If I don't know exactly how long it's going to take me to capture the image, I'll trigger the camera with a remote shutter. So that'll begin the exposure, and then I go in front of the lens, and then I illustrate whatever it is that I'm drawing, and I'll do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, tons of different characters if I need to. But it is one long exposure, and you can see this in the back of the camera. Usually I'll do a back of the camera reveal that'll tell you how many seconds the image took. Sometimes it takes minutes to capture something with 7 or 8 figures in it. So yeah, one image, not multiple images layered in Photoshop. Are there examples of when it doesn't come out like you want? For example, bloopers. Yeah, there have been a lot of bloopers over the years. Most of them I'm not proud of, but I'll showcase a couple right now because I think it's funny. Sometimes when you try something over and over again, it doesn't work, and you just got to keep on trying until you have something that you're like, yeah, that's it. But you never know until you try it as many times as needed. And sometimes it can take all night to do something simple like a cactus or whatever. There's like a million different cactuses that didn't work out because the line just didn't look like a cactus, or it looked like a wonky version of a cactus, or whatever it is. So the idea is that you're going to have tons of bloopers. You're going to make tons of mistakes along the way. But the idea is for you to have something that you love that you created that works and maybe other people enjoy it as well. Next question. Do you like drawing skeletons or dinosaurs more? Well, I guess that depends on the place. If it's a graveyard, I would probably like to do skeletons more because it's more appropriate for the scenario. However, if it's in the middle of a forest or a landscape that looks pretty timeless, I would prefer doing dinosaurs because, I mean, you know, I love both of them. I think they're both very interesting things. One speaks to humanity, and the other one speaks to history, evolution, time itself, you know, all these things. So skeletons and dinosaurs, to me, are important features and themes in my work because they speak to humanity and time itself. Next question. Which software do you use? So in my art, I capture everything on a camera in RAW. So raw photographs, for those of you that aren't familiar, is a method of capturing images, and it takes in the most information. So you have these files that are like, you know, 80 megabyte files. They're huge. Each image has 80 megabytes of information on it. And my understanding for imagery is I'm trying to get the most information out of an image. So when you capture an image, you're basically looking at things through a sensor, and the sensor is capturing this light, and then you have an image, you know, and it could be a dark image with bright areas, or it could be a bright image with some dark spots. For light painting, it's usually on the darker scale, so you want to have that leeway that raw imagery provides. Using a raw processing tool like Lightroom, Adobe Lightroom, this is a good method to pull as much information you can out of what was captured in camera. So what I usually do is I'll turn down the highlights in order to get the light looking very good, and then I'll boost the shadows to see as much as I can out of the environment. So a correct balance of these things means that you have an epic image, and you can see almost everything. There's no like areas that are too bright, and there's no areas that are too dark. So the software I use is Lightroom, and that is to process raw files and pull as much information I can out of an image. When you're shooting stuff like astrophotography, like stars, low light scenarios, you want the highest dynamic range as possible. So that's the information from light to dark or dark to light. And that's what I use. Where did I get my lights from? So this is kind of interesting because in the beginning I would get my lights from like liquor stores and whatever. I would buy keychain flashlights, whatever LEDs I could come up with. So there were toys, there were keychains, things that were not built for that purpose. And then over time I was kind of like, I really need something specific, something that works for what I do. And that's when I began devising my own tools. So this is like me in my garage, like building things out of copper wire, switches, batteries, LEDs, and I used everything I could, and I built thousands of different tools. Most of them I don't use, but some of them I use all the time. And the one that I use all the time is the Knight Rider because it is the best tool for drawing. It's ergonomic, it's rechargeable, and it's very bright, and there's different colors I can use, and it's precise. So I think the most important thing is to have something that you understand why it works for you. You know, some people use tubes, other people use RGB lights. I use a precision drawing tool, and that defines my style of photography, and that is why I do it. I build them and I sell them on my website in batches of 10. You can find them on DARIUSTWIN. They are called Night Rider. But to be honest, you can begin light painting using any tool that emits light. Hello again. So the next question. Does each shot have the same time interval, or do you control the shutter manually? How is the background light consistent? Good question. So each shot does not have the same time interval. Every shot is different. And the reason for this is that some designs are complicated and some designs are simple. But if you don't know how long it's going to take you to produce a shot, you need to generalize the settings for the shot. So on my website, I provide a couple different camera settings that you might want to consider if you're shooting in certain conditions. You're usually going to have something like, okay, if it's a full moon, you're going to have a higher f-stop, a lower ISO, and then you should shoot on bulb mode. I keep on bringing this up, but bulb mode is the best way to do light paintings if you're not sure how much time it's going to take. And it doesn't need to be super technical. You know, a lot of photographers, they say, oh, it has to be exactly this time, you know, and they get all specific about like, well, how much time is it going to take exactly? And they get hung up on this process. I don't get hung up on that process. I get hung up on the artistry of what is being created within the photograph. So I generalize these principles and I say, okay, if it's going to be a full moon, you're going to want an f-stop of something like f8, ISO 160 for a couple minutes or whatever. I will trigger it by clicking the camera on, clicking the camera off. In response to how is the background evenly lit, that also depends on camera settings. So you have different phases of lighting conditions. You have full moon, you have blue hour, and then you have a new moon, or you have, you know, stars. So each one of these things requires different camera settings, and it's kind of a balance of exposure time, ambient light conditions, and camera settings. Where can I buy the thing you use to make the light paintings? So I talked about this before. This is Night Rider, and you can buy it on DARIUSTWIN.com. Are you viewing what you draw on your phone via a camera app? No, I am not. I'm not viewing anything on my phone that's like a progress of what's going on with my camera. I could do it, and there's a couple different camera systems that allow you to do that. The Olympus OM system is one where you can light paint and you can see your progress as you're going along to it. However, you know, there's some disadvantages to this because I was talking about flow state before, and flow state is when your mind is fixated on this specific idea and you're trying to produce this idea. Do you really want to take your mind off the ball and look at your phone and take you out of that flow state? Because if you do that, I mean, it's very easy to lose focus of where you are in time and space, and then you're trying to view the latency that's going through the electric signals from your camera to your phone, where your mind's at. This is a complicated thing, and I personally don't like the idea of it. I've tried to do it before. I just don't think it works very well. There is a latency that will disrupt flow state. So your mind is sharp. It should come to a point. You don't want to dull that sharpness by external focuses. And that's it. So I hope you've enjoyed this episode of Light Talk with DARIUSTWIN. Subscribe to my channel if you want to learn more about light painting. Drop me a comment below if you want to ask questions that are not answered in this video, and I'll do my best. Stay bright.